So redirecting. So it seems that is working. Just to see if it's...
Then there is one way that you can put only your picture in the book picture instead everyone.
Redirecting. So I need first to do something. So it seems that is working. Just to see if it's...
Then there is one way that you can put...
It is working. We are live.
Okay, let me just see, because we are having something here. So I guess that now is okay, at least for the mic. So you guys can hear me through Zoom, I believe, right? So let me now try to share the book. Be patient with me, please. So now I don't know how it is appearing on the YouTube, but let's carry on our study. And if you do have to adjust something for the next one, we do. Good evening, everyone. I can see that Sandra has joined us for the Astral City study. And we stopped here at this point, and we'll take from there, right? As you see, my friend remarked Luiz, even here, we are reminded of the gospel lesson, man shall not live by bread alone. At that point, the conversation was interrupted by the ringing of a bell. Luiz got up and answered the door. Two courteous men, let me just stop that here. Luiz got up and answered the door. Two courteous men, young men, came into the room. He greeted them cordially, introducing them as Polydor and Estasius, from the Minister of Elucidation. Greetings and handshakes followed, and after a few minutes, Laura said with a smile, "You have all worked hard today." Let me do the first interruption here. When they are talking about work, it's not like a mental work per se, right? We're talking about producing an activity on the spiritual world. So we need to get used to that, because whenever we change from here to over there, despite that a lot of us think we'll be there living a dream in the paradise or not having to do any effort, that's not the case. We continue working, studying, and everything else you may think. You must therefore alter your program on our account. It is time for you to set out on your planned excursions to the music park. Noticing Lysia's perturbed look, she added, "Go along, son. Don't keep Lacinia waiting. Our brother Andre will stay with me until he can accompany you on these excursions." First remark, at this point, we believe Andre Luiz, the author, is already someone that has acquired enough knowledge and he's balanced, at least, right? Even like that, there are places he cannot go. So that shows us how things are well organized. It's not because they don't want him to go, it's because he does not have conditions to go. Perhaps in due time he will, and we all evolve. But at that moment in time, he could not follow his friend, right? Please, don't tell me you keep me, don't let me keep you at home, I explained. I can enjoy the pleasure of going to the music park. I can't yet enjoy the pleasure of going to the music park. My granddaughter returned from Earth a few days ago, and I is still too weak to go out. They left, chatting joyfully. Laura shut the door, then turned to me, and they are going in search of the food we were talking about just now. So there are food to maintain the spiritual body, and there are food for the soul, for the spirit. Sorry, soul is when we are incarnated. The ties of love are stronger and more beautiful here. Love, my friends, is the divine bread of the soul, the sustenance of the heart. Doesn't your granddaughter come for meals? So here, show us how things continue whenever we are. The relations we have on earth is extended to the spiritual world. Perhaps we won't be all together at the same time, but eventually we have, as an example here, a granddaughter, a father, a mother, a sister, that could be around us. But there's another thing very, very interesting. Is she coming to eat meals? So once again, just to refresh our mind, we do have meals, we have food, we have water, we have electricity, we have infrastructure to distribute water. We have signals, transmissions. We have receptors, transceivers and receivers of signals, audio, music, video. Everything is here, written in this book. So I'm not taking that from my head. It's written in this book. I asked Laura, leading the conversation to more intimate channels. For the present, she takes her meals alone. She answered, the poor thing is still nervous to run down, and no one in that condition is supposed to partake of collective meals. So we are not talking only about one suffering spirit who just arrived and is eating. There are collective meals, means that at least spirits are around her. They also do the same, they eat. Neurasthenia and anxiety emit dense poisonous fluids, which blend immediately with the food. Here I need to say something. Sometimes we even joke with friends or colleagues from different creeds when they stop and they pray before they eat. It took me several years until I realized they are 100% right to do that. They may do that for different reasons, but the process that they start when they do that is a kind of cleansing method for the food, to the point that was proven by Satoru Emoto that the power of our thoughts and words reflect into the food. So he's a scientist and he proved that. And I would say that if we do have this practice, perhaps something that could even make us feel ill or undigested at least could be changed. But we don't talk about that in the Spiritism. But Andre Luiz does. Perhaps if you read that through without paying much attention, we don't even notice what we just highlighted here. But if we do start to create a routine of a very quick prayer or a very quick positive thought towards the food before we eat, even to the water before we drink, we may be surprised. My granddaughter spent a fortnight in lower zones, in heavy slumber, closely assisted by us. She should have been lodged in a hospital pavilion when she came here. But it was decided that she would be placed under my direct care instead. So we have two different scenarios here. We have a doctor that went for a couple of years in the lower zone, and we had another example that is her granddaughter that were there for a couple of days-ish and was able to go straight into her house to her care. I told Laura that I would be glad to visit the newcomer, and she willingly agreed. She led me to a spacious and comfortable room where a pale girl was lying in an easy chair. Well, here we have the description of a normal house, right? Normal room with furniture like a chair. So it's always good to remember people that spirits also sit. But something that got my attention is that the status of that girl. She is pale. What happened when we are pale? At least we need to have some chemical reaction not working very well in our body, right? So same thing applies to the Perispirit. Yesterday, we were having a discussion in a meeting about Perispirit. And if we do truly believe that our physical body is connected to our spiritual body, molecule by molecule or cells by cells, means the Perispirit has every single organ like our physical body. And I'm talking about the realm close to where we are, earthly spirits. I'm not talking about angels or high evolved spirits. I'm talking about spirits nearby, right? So we can find in this book also descriptions like this pale girl that is pretty much like we can face on Earth. So the same reactions, chemical and physical reactions that do happen with us here can also exist in the spiritual world, of course, taking to the account that we're talking about a different status of the matter, nevertheless, matter. Eloisa, Laura said, introducing me, he is a friend who arrived from Earth in a short time ago. The young lady gazed me at curiously, and her tired, deeply shadowed eyes reflect her effort to concentrate. She greeted me with a wan smile as I introduced myself. I asked if she was tired, but before she could answer, her grandmother, anxious to spare her any strain, explained. Eloisa has been restless and worried, and her fear is justified to a certain degree. Tuberculosis, which put an end to her earthly days after long suffering, has left deep traces on her astral body. Still, we must always be optimistic and courageous. I heard over and over the years in a mediumistic meeting that no, that spirit is just having the reflex of her or his thought. When the spirit dies, there's no such a thing like your perispirit is hurted. This is just a reflex of her mental status or her thought. I don't think so. I truly don't think so, because we have enough information through reliable mediums and spirits telling us otherwise. This young girl has died of tuberculosis, and I believe we all know how our physical body ends when we have tuberculosis. We have at least some scars after that process. And here, she's telling us that her spiritual body is also suffering a consequence of tuberculosis. I'm not saying she's having tuberculosis there. I'm saying that after she passed away, the limitations that have been caused by tuberculosis to her physical body are also hurted, also damaged her spiritual body. And therefore, until she recovers herself, she'll need to be treated. And as we saw also in this book, there are treatments, there are medicines, there are everything available to treat her, not only with the power of the mind or passes, healing, fluids. It's that as well, but it's not only that. Still, we must always be optimistic and courageous. Why saying that? Because even when we are incarnated, being optimistic is also half of the battle. If we contract a disease and we feel like, oh my God, I have only a couple of days to go, or a couple of weeks, a couple of years, doesn't matter. But it's not like that. We need to focus on the positive way. Yes, I have this disease, but I will be better. But as soon as I get over it, I have a lot of things to do. We need to engage ourselves with a better vision for any situation. At this, the young lady opened wide her deep black eyes as if to hold back her tears, but unsuccessfully. Then she covered her face with her handkerchief, and began to sob. Poor little thing, said the kindly grandmother, putting her arms around the tearful girl. You simply must control yourself. These impressions are due to a deficient religious education. That is all. You know that your mother won't be long in coming, and that you can count on your fiancé fidelity. He is by no means prepared to offer you sincere spiritual devotion on earth, for he is still very far from the possessing that sublime spirit of illuminated love. He is sure to marry someone else, and it is better that you become accustomed to this idea. It wouldn't be fair to insist on his coming here prematurely. We have few things to talk about on this sentence. First, one spirit interact to another. The grandmother put her arm around her. So, the very same matter of my perispirit will interact with your perispirit, and we'll feel like we are hugging each other, all right? The way the grandmother talks to her granddaughter, she was a grown-up already, right? But show how kind she is. So that shows us how kind we must be if we are facing our young children, for example, in a mediumship meeting. There's no difference between a kid here and a kid there. We need to prepare ourselves to be kind in every situation. And the another thing brought to us here is not clear, but it's like the granddaughter wanted so much to be together again with her fiancé that she wanted him to die, to come closer to her ASAP. So it's not described as an obsession per se, but the mechanism is the same. She left the body, she went to the spiritual world, and now she wants the young lad to come together, to come closer. So in a way she presented here doesn't sound bad, but depending on the strength of the spirit, it can be nasty. Suppose he did come forcing the law. Wouldn't your suffering be greater? Wouldn't you have to pay a heavy price for any share you might have had in bringing about his passing? So I think now is giving us another hunch that we're talking about a possible case of obsession here, right? But I also bring to our attention that perhaps one spirit may contribute to abbreviate our time on earth. Of course, there are so many plus and minus on this equation, but I can take that from that sentence. Otherwise, her grandmother would not say to her that you would have some consequences if you have contributed to that end, right? You won't lack devoted friendship and brotherly cooperation to help you acquire your spiritual balance here. And if you really love the boy, you must try to adopt a harmonious attitude to be able to help him later. Besides, as I have already said, your mother will soon be here. The girl's tears filled me with pity. I tried to draw her attention to a different topic, leading the conversation away from this painful subject. Where do you come from? I asked. Laura, now silent, also seemed anxious to see her join in the conversation. After a long pause, during which she dried her tears, she replied, from Rio de Janeiro. You shouldn't cry so, I advised. You don't know how lucky you are, how lucky you have been. You've passed over only a few days ago and are already with your family. You didn't have to face any storms on the great journey. The girl seemed a little better and said, you can't imagine how much I've suffered. 8 months struggling with tuberculosis. And here we go, complaining. In spite of all the treatments, the sorrow of having infected my devoted mother, all that my poor fiancé went through on my account is really indescribable. Oh dear, don't say that, Laura, said smiling. On earth, we always seem to labor under the illusion that no suffering is greater than our own. It is mere blindness. There are millions of creatures facing situations much harsher and more cruel than our little experiences. Well, this is very true, isn't it? My problem is always more important than your problem. I don't care about your problem. I just broke my nail. you lost your feet. But my pain of breaking my nail is way bigger than yours because it's my problem. We used to recommend to people that arrive in the Spiritist Center asking for help. Not everyone, of course, but in some cases, we recommend them to pay a visit to some institutions, to some hospitals, to some specific places where they could compare their sufferings with other people. And that is a wonderful medicine, because sometimes we feel like, oh, you know, I'm the worst person on earth. I lost this, or I have that problem, blah, blah, blah. And then we are facing other people with undescribable pain or under very poor conditions. It's like, I'm not that bad after all. And if I can see that, is already the first step to improve my own situation. But grandmother, Arnold, was so heartbroken and desperate, she answered. It is all so hard to understand. Do you really believe in your impressions? Laura asked in a tender voice. I observed your ex-fiancé several times during your infirmity. Oh, here he comes. It was only natural that he should be so deeply affected at seeing the ruin of your physical body. But once more, let me tell you, he can understand pure sentiment and will soon get over his sorrow. Remember, dear, that illuminated love is still above most creatures. Therefore, you must try to be of good cheer. No doubt you will be able to help him, but his being faithful to your memory is out of the question. Oh, she's not helping. It's out of the question. When you are in a condition to visit the spheres of the planet, you will find him married to somebody else. I don't think she wants to hear that. Wondering myself, I noted Eloisa's painful surprise. The poor girl did not know what attitude to adopt before her grandmother's serenity and common sense. Could that be possible? She blurted out. Lisa's mother, tenderly stroking the girl's hair, continued. Now, child, you mustn't be obstinate to try to contradict me. Seeing that her granddaughter seemed to expect her to justify her words, she went on, speaking gently. Do you remember Maria da Luz, the colleague girlfriend who brought you flowers every Sunday? Oh dear. Well, when the doctor declared confidentially that your physical cure could not be expected, Arnold, thought deeply grieved, began to involve her in different mental vibrations. And now that you are here, they won't take long before coming to an agreement. Oh, grandmother, how awful. Why awful? You must become accustomed to considering her other people's need. Your ex-fiancé is an ordinary man, still unable to appreciate the sublime beauty of spiritual love. However great your love may be, you can work miracles in him. Every creature holds the exclusive privilege of discovering his own self. Arnold will one day know the beauty of your idealism, but for the present, he must be left to live through these necessary experiences. I simply can't get over it. Maria da Luz, whom I always consider a most faithful friend. Laura, well, I'm not making any comment here because I think it's so straightforward, you know, I think we can picture the situation clearly. Laura smiled and advised wisely. Won't it be better to entrust him to a friend? Maria da Luz will always be your spiritual friend, whereas another woman might later render the entrance to his heart difficult for you. Eloisa started sobbing again. I felt greatly puzzled. The kind lady, sensing my perplexity and eager to help me as well as her granddaughter, explained. I know the cause of your tears, little one. They are the results of centuries of selfishness and undying vanity. But remember that Grandma's words aren't meant to hurt you, but to open your eyes. Sometimes we want to hear what we want to hear. And when someone explains some harsh situations like this one we just read, oh, you're lacking charity, you're lacking love and things like that. But sometimes it is required. Otherwise, the person will stall and stay in that point for God knows how long. So sometimes we need to be more abrupted in the way we present the facts to allow them to realize that there is something else. I'm not saying always, but sometimes it is required. While Eloisa continued weeping, Laura invited me to go back to the living room, remarking that the patients needed her rest. We sat down to await the order's return, and Laura confided in a soft voice. My granddaughter arrived here extremely tired. She let her heart get entangled in the web of self-esteem. In fact, she should have been sent to one of our hospitals. But Assistant Corsero thought that the home atmosphere and our loving care would be advisable in her case. I must say, I was pleased at his decisions, as my dear Teresa, her mother, will soon be here. A little patience and everything will come out right. It's just a question of time and serenity. Well, this chapter is over, right? I bet you all missed something very interesting from the beginning of today. Lysias, he went out with someone. What is her to him? I don't want to bring you any spoiler, but keep that in mind. Notions about home. Eager to learn as much as possible from my well-informed hostess, I asked curiously, with so much to do at home, do you still go out to work? We stop here. She has lots of things to do at home. Not only looking after her granddaughter, but there are also other activities at home that requires her attention. And she also works. I certainly do. We live in a colony of transition, which has as its main purpose apprenticeship and work. Here, feminine souls are assigned numerous tasks in preparation for her return to the planet on the ascent to higher spheres. But is domestic organization in Astral City similar to that on Earth? So now we have a domestic organization. Oh dear. Dear Lord, here we go. It is the earthly home which has for so long been trying to imitate our domestic institution. So once again, we have a primary example that we are a copy of what they have on the spiritual world. Married couples there, with rare exceptions, are still wedding the soil of their feelings, overrun with the bitter herbs of pride and infested with parasites of jealousy and selfishness. The last time I returned from the planet, I arrived here, as is natural, besetted by deep illusions. But it happened that during my crisis of wounded pride, I was taken to a lecture given by a great instructor from the Ministry of Elucidation. Since that day, a new current of ideas has penetrated my mind. Could you tell me something of the lessons you received? The lecturer, she continued, a great mathematician, made us realize that on the plane of spiritual evolution, the home way be compared to a right angle. The vertical line is the feminine sentiment, always gravitating towards the creative inspirations of life. The horizontal line is the masculine mentality, always striving for achievements towards the common progress. The home is the sacred summit of the converging point, where man and woman met to bring about an essential understanding. It is the temple where creatures should reach for a spiritual communion rather than bodily union. This is very difficult, right? This is very difficult because we don't understand what that means. We want to get married, we want to have a partner, we want to have a family, we want to have kids because we want. But I think it's fair to say the great majority of people, they don't deeply understand what a spiritual communion really means. At present, there are a great many people on earth versed in social questions who advocate various measures and call for a regeneration of domestic life. Some go so far as to state that the family institution is threatened. We must remember that the home is a sublime conquest, which mankind is slowly achieving. But can one find on earth the real family structure where all rights and duties are legitimately shared? Most earthly couples pass these sacred hours together in an environment of indifference and cruel selfishness. When the husband appears calm, the wife gives herself up to crises of despair. When the wife keeps humbly silent, her husband tyrannizes her. Neither does the wife attempt to encourage her husband along the horizontal line of his temporal fulfillment, nor does he try to follow his companion in her divine flights of tenderness and sentiment towards the higher planes of creation. In their social contacts, both wear masks, but in the privacy of their home, they strip them off, sadly exposing their lack of mutual understanding. Let me stop here a little bit because I'm getting tired. We have to remember the time and age when this book has been brought to us. We also have to remember that some of those questions they brought to us, they were very much alive at that time. And as the time goes by, regardless that a lot of it is still present, it has improved. As if we were comparing ourselves today with Jesus' time, we also improved. In some areas, some other areas, it's kind of, we went backwards, but in some areas we improved, right? But one thing got my attention here when she talked about masks. Now, right after the pandemic times, talking about masks, we think about that mask, right? But we're talking about this mask. In front of our work colleagues, we wear one mask. In front of colleagues in the Spiritist Center, we wear another mask. But when we are at home, then we allow ourselves to be without masks. I believe that as we progress, as we get more information, not only about Spiritism, but in general, we start to drop those masks to the point that even if without masks, we are not perfect, but we are improving. That's not a rule. There's always exceptions as well, but I believe things are improving. Fair to say that we hear more bad things than good things on TV, but that's because we also sell more when we show those things, right? But I think things are getting better. As a rule, when one of them comments on his or her respective activities, the other's attention promptly strays far from the subject. When the wife discusses the children, the husband mentally turns his thoughts into his work. It sounds pretty much actual. When the latter relates some business difficulty, the former's thoughts adrift to the dressmaker fitting room. Of course, this is just to give a picture of the situation, right? Not specifically. In these circumstances, it is obvious that the divine angle is far from being properly traced. Two diverging lines are endeavoring in vain to form the sublime vertex, to ascend one more step up in the glorious stairways leading to eternal life. It's a nice way to see that. This new aspect of the responsibility of marriage ties struck deep into my spirit. Highly impressed, I exclaimed. What a multitude of thoughts this explanation is arousing on me. If we only knew all of this while still on earth. A mere questions of experience, my friend, she replied. Suffering and tribulations will slowly teach mankind these unavoidable lessons. At present, few realize that the home is the divine institution, within which one must live with all one's heart and soul. I think we don't have an argument here, right? The home is the divine institution. It is often said that all creatures are beautiful when truly in love. Indeed, this is true. During the enchanting period of betrothal, I don't even know what this word means. If anyone wants to help me, please do so, because I don't know what this word means. Plains creatures display their most charming traits. Any subject seems enchanting over the most frivolous conversation. Men and women meet, radiating the full measure of their sublime forces. But when they enter wedlock, many rend the veil of desire and fell back under the influence of the old monsters that tyrannized weak hearts. I think that when he talks about that monsters that tyrannized weak hearts, we all had that, right? We have to remember that despite that we came from a long distance already, we're still not perfect. And we have a lot of bad impulses if we don't look after ourselves all the time, if we don't be careful all the time. Gone is all tolerance, and sometimes even brotherly cooperation. The luminous beauty of love gradually dies out, and the couple begins to drift apart, avoiding each other's company, losing the joy of friendly conversation. Henceforth, the well-educated ones respect each other, while the ill-bred ones tow out outwardly, manifest the not mutual animosity. They don't try to come to a conciliatory understanding. Questions and answers are formulated in dry phrases. Physical intercourse may still be carried on, but their minds are already divorced and following opposite directions. I believe to a certain extent that is describing something that's very actual nowadays and always been. Because if we are together for the wrong reasons, or if we could not find that spiritual link, at least, we're just talking about matter, just about sensation, physical sensation. And especially when we growing older, the beauty goes away, like the body gives away. So if you don't have anything else, what is left? So I still think that there are not too many people in this world that is accustomed to that notion. How true your words are, I cried out with feeling. But what can we do, my friend? My kind hostess continued. In the present phase of the planet evolution, unions between twin souls are rare. A marriage of kindred or even sympathetic souls are tremendously outweighed by a remarkable percentage of probation ties. Most human couples are made up, so to speak, of handcuffed prisoners. I don't know. I really don't know if that makes sense. But it depends how we engage ourselves in that process, right? Is it true to say that today marriage lasts less than 100 years ago? Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if there's really any difference today from what used to be. Maybe. When he's talking about here handcuffed prisoners, perhaps at that time, like 70 years ago, there was more like that, in our world. Nowadays, some regions in the globe still have some strange situations, if I can say like that, but I rather believe is less and less. Endeavoring to follow the trend of ideas suggested by my initial question, Lysia's mothers continued. Feminine souls do not remain inactive here. They are trained to become worthy mothers, wives, sisters, missionaries. The woman's tasks in the home cannot be confined to a few idle tears of pity and many years of servitude. Let me stop here. Feminine souls do not remain inactive here. So in the spiritual world, we know no one remains inactive. They are trained to become worthy mothers, wives, sisters, missionaries. I believe this is normal, right? I think that if I'm a woman, in theory, I have to procreate. In theory, I have to be married one day. In theory, I will have sisters. In theory, the motherhood is a mission anyway. So the missionary sense here is something that's quite broad. So it does make sense to me if we see like that. If we're talking about that with certain type of groups, they may see that with a different pair of eyes. But everything is how we interpret it, and everything is how we want to see. Of course. Oh, sorry. On the end here, servitude, right? The idea of servitude is something that the woman's task at home cannot be confined. So it's kind of giving a boost, giving a support to the woman not to be in a servitude position. Of course, today's rash feminist movement is a grievous offense to the true attributes of the feminine spirit. I don't even talk about that because honestly, I don't even know if the feminine movement at that time and today have changed or not changed. I guess everything has evolved, but I don't have information for that. But something we cannot ignore. The biological status of a woman remains the same. It hasn't changed, right? So potentially, the woman can be a mother, can be a sister, can be what is described here, right? So that haven't changed. Women are meant to set themselves up as rivals to men in offices and in the different professions and business departments, which are, let me highlight that here, otherwise I'll get lost. Different professions and business departments, which are adequate fields for masculine activities. This is shocking, really, isn't it?
Yeah, to be honest, it's a little bit hard to read. Women are not meant to be. Then I understand that women are not meant to set themselves rivals to men, and men should not be rivals to men itself. But it's a little bit hard to read that. I'm just, the only way that I can interpret that is something that is of the time of publication of that. I don't know. It feels a little bit odd to me.
It depends, Daniel. In my opinion, it depends. It depends what we want to see, right? I will describe here one experience I had, right? That may be able to illustrate what I'm going to present. I was a lead of one department in my in my area of expertise. And traditionally, we only had men working in that area. Why is that? Because of the amount of load and the hardship of where we used to work. Even for men, I've seen many asked to go back home in just a week of the experience because the environment is really, really harsh. So when I joined that field, I don't remember having any woman there. It has changed. And I employed women to that area a few years later. But one thing could not be changed. The weight, for example, just to give one example, there are other examples, right? The weight of electric motor that could be lifted by one of those men could not be lifted by a woman. Could not. And the team we had was a team of 3 people. But on the other hand, they could do things that the fellows, they could not do it. They could not do it. They did a brilliant work in some other areas, but because of the physical limitation, they could not lift the same electric motor, for example. Hi, Faye.
Hi. Just corroborate to say what you're saying. I find it very a bit strange too, but because in my field, I was the only woman. Then there are many more now. And it's true, there are things that for the women they couldn't do, but in the same field, there are other parts of the tasks. Even in the perception, in the thinking of it, and the ability, that will be harder for the man, and the woman can. So in the end, they become half and half. Yeah.
And it is a process. There's always a progress. So in the beginning, continue what I was explaining, on the beginning it was difficult to make it happen, because how we can do it? It's not because we don't want, but it was because we started suffering because we cannot do it. And then we had something that has happened. We had a change in the way we did things. New equipment had been brought into the equation, different scenarios, different procedures. So yes, the difference remains the same, but things have been adapted in a way that that difference could be mitigated. Perhaps not entirely, but a good part of it has been mitigated today.
I have a question, if that's okay. Do you think this particular part there is something, is a general, or would it be reflecting that time? Because suppose Nosso Lar would reflect pretty much what was happening downstairs.
I would expand that question. We know that in the spiritual world, they are ahead of us X amount of years.
Yeah.
Right? Having that in mind, let's say that they are 70 years ahead of us, and this book was written 70 years ago. I'm bringing some more factors into that equation, right?
That's my question. Yeah.
So then this could be today, for example, right? Despite it was written 70 years ago, that's an information valid for today. But depend how we want to see that information. Is the information complete? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think the information has been given in a period of the time and age to explain what they want to transmit at that time. Possibly today, they would not use like that. They would bring like, yes, it's like that, but like I said, but we have means to reduce that gap, that difference, you know, we have equipment, they would bring in a different analogy to make it understand better. Because what we need to understand is what we studied earlier today. They only bring to us something we can understand at that time. If at that time they have mentioned, yes, they mentioned that, but we are also adapting, we are also bringing that, possibly we would say, no, that's not possible. Because we don't do that here, you guys don't do that over there. So we always have to take in that account out of the test, remove aside a little bit, and we try to understand the words, understand the meaning, bring into the factor the time and age, and how people would perceive that 70 years ago.
Yeah, because it makes me think, for example, that nowadays, this week, and some of my students, one of them in particular is a trainee captain on the 777, and they fly the full female crew in the Arab countries. which is
That would be unthinkable at that
in
time.
Saudi. Yeah.
So I think that, does it shock me the way it's written? No, it does not. Because I bring into the equation everything we said so far. I bring time, I bring perception, I bring what we would like to see at that time, what we would accept at that time. So we need to bring all of it. For example, we're talking about Andre Luiz 70 years ago, but there are things in Kardec 150 years ago on the same type of, not exactly the same, but on the same type of dilemma that we have in the Spiritist book. Does a woman have a soul?
Yeah.
I don't believe the spirit who answered him had any doubt, nor Kardec. But at that time, women would not be able to vote because they were not considered as equal. But it is ridiculous to us today. But perhaps if we were there at that time, we would be shocked as someone is asking if the woman has a soul.
Yeah.
No, they don't. Why are you asking? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We need to take all those different bits and bobs into the equation.
Yeah.
And I remember one colleague of ours, that was Saul, asked me, do you think Kardec was wrong? Do you think the answer is wrong? I said, no, the answer given is not wrong. But from that moment in time until today, we acquire more information. So then that answer becomes incomplete. And today we're going to add a few more layers to the answer. But in 100 years' time, someone will stop and say, look at that. Look what they're saying here. How animalized they were 100 years ago, because they were able to add a few other levels of information to the same answer. So I think it's all part of a normal process. As ever, how we perceive things is how we want to perceive things.
Yeah.
If I'm a feminist looking at to things like that, oh dear, no, we have a problem here. But I understand. It could be shocking. But if we don't allow ourselves to understand that equation more into the details, I think we are only understand partially, because I want to understand what I want to understand anyway. I think we need to give us that right to have a broader understanding of things we read. For example, reading the Bible. Everybody's happy to read the Bible, but there are things in the Bible today that even science does not allow us to accept anymore, but we accept in a way because it's convenient to accept. So we need to, I think, as any subject, we need to be flexible. We need to be flexible. We need to understand. We need to give ourselves the opportunity. And yeah, there are things that are unacceptable. I just saw a hand flashing, but I don't know who it. Oh, Daniel. Hi, Daniel. Go on.
No, I just got from the top that this is. Can I think that this is an opinion from Lais's mother, which is not perfect, and Nosso Lar, which is not place that is perfect as well? And can I hope that maybe at this moment in time in the Nosso Lar, we may have different opinions and different opportunities to face this in different perspective.
Yeah, it's a possibility. Nosso Lar is not a Spiritist city. Nosso Lar is a city as any other city we can compare in the world. They have so many different types of spirits and different levels of evolution of spirits in the city. It is a possibility. But I don't think they would bring something if it did not have had a purpose. Perhaps the purpose to bring that information at that time was exactly to allow us to have this conversation today. Because so many things have been brought in the Spiritism, even at Kardec's time, that at that time no one even understood. But now we are talking about it. Now we have evolved. We have been acquainted to the level of information that allows us to, at least to try to understand better. So just a thought, you know, there's no right or wrong. Hi, Sandra.
Sorry, Guilherme, I have to go.
Oh my God. Not forgettable. Okay, Sandra, see you.
Thank you.
Oh dear, it's time. I missed time. That's my bad. Sorry. You see, the subject is so powerful that I missed the time. I really apologize. I really do apologize. So let me save the file here and I will stop sharing. I love when we have conversations like that. This is good, you know, I love it. I really do. So, well, thank you very much, you guys, for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stop recording.
Thanks, everyone.
Let me
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
And you. Good night.
And
Thank you.
yeah, I'm looking forward to see you guys again very soon.
Lovely. Thank you, Guilherme. Ciao, ciao.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.